Oral History, Tools and Technology by Scott Keefer, Provincial Archivist for the Daughters of Charity, Province of St. Louise. This tutorial is an online webinar by the Technology Committee for the Archivists for Congregations of Women Religious. Oral histories are the stories told by people who live them in their own words that may not otherwise show up in the written or printed documents of a collection. They can document a particular time in someone's life or be a version of a life story. They usually have a permission form granting an archive ownership of the interview and establishing some permissions for use. Analog formats include cassette tapes for audio and VHS tapes for video interviews. If you record in this way, you should first make sure that you have working equipment and know how to use it. Be aware that this equipment is getting more and more difficult to acquire and run, and if it breaks, it may be difficult to replace. Cassette and VHS tapes are also at high risk of degrading. If you record new interviews on these mediums, or have legacy interviews on these mediums, you should try and update them to digital formats as soon as possible. Cassette tapes can be digitized using a cassette tape converter, which usually costs less than $50. You can use a free program like Audacity to import the audio and create a digital file. VHS tapes have similar configuration tools and programs, most of which can be purchased for under $100. Even though they may degrade, this does not mean you should destroy the old legacy interviews. They should be kept in a stable climate as master versions of the interviews. Rewind the tapes before storage. Avoid stacking cassette tapes on top of each other, and keep VHS tapes standing upright. Once they are digitized, users primarily should use the digital versions of the interviews. The most important part of recording equipment, whether you use a digital recorder, digital camera, or analog equipment, is that you feel comfortable working it, and that it can save files in non-proprietary formats that are usable on all systems. Test out the equipment first until you are comfortable. Top-of-the-line equipment may record in better sound quality, but ultimately, getting the oral history down and recorded is more important than the most expensive equipment. Beware the convenience of recording on your phone, as the interview may be difficult to get to your servers or preservation systems, and may export to non-standard formats. Audio-only interviews should be kept in two formats: an uncompressed preservation copy, typically a WAV file, and a compressed access copy, typically an MP3 file. These formats are usable across all systems and equipment. Video files should be kept in a format that is stable, either MPEG 2000, AVI, or MOV. Be aware that a drawback of digital preservation is that these files are very large, take up a lot of digital space, and, if you are digitizing analog legacy interviews in-house, must be played in their entirety before they can be saved. Sending legacy collections out in bulk can be expensive and is priced based on runtime. Once you have a digital file of an interview, whether born digital or converted from an analog format, you still have to manage this file over time. Remember locks. Lots of copies keep stuff safe. This involves keeping separate copies of the digital interview on geographically separate servers and running checksums periodically to ensure that there have not been changes in the data. Remember these key components: The interviewer should make sure they are comfortable using their recording equipment for an oral history interview. Digital recording equipment should record in file formats that are non-proprietary and usable across multiple operating systems. Analog formats are at high risk for degradation, and efforts should be made to ensure their digital preservation. Digital interviews still need to be managed and preserved to ensure their lasting use. Remember these key components. The interviewer should make sure they're comfortable using their recording equipment for an oral history interview. Digital recording equipment should record in file formats that are non-proprietary and usable across multiple operating systems. Analog formats are at high risk for degradation, and efforts should be made to ensure their digital preservation. Digital interviews still need to be managed and preserved to ensure their lasting use. Thanks to the ACWR Board and Technology Committee for producing these tutorials.